And consumerism is really a symptom of the society that we live in. I mean, I never really got the idea of spending a ton of money on things that you don't necessarily need. They'll just end up in a landfill in a few days or so once you get bored of it. What really made me talk about this is trends that I see on TikTok where people will buy things just because that's the trend that's going on right now. For instance, Labubu's. That was popular for a minute and eventually just faded out of existence. I don't even really hear anyone talk about those anymore. People bought them and used them for like a few days or a week to make content, and now they're probably just sitting on a shelf somewhere and collecting dust. And that's what I mean. That's the reason I wanted to bring up consumerism, because it's extremely wasteful. But like I said in the beginning, it's a symptom of our society. I really think at the root of hyper consumerism, people buying useless things that they don't need, at the root of that comes the root of that is people trying to buy these things to fill a void that is inside of them that they can't really fulfill with anything else. See, I think the society creates a pit inside of people's souls because this hyper capitalist, very greedy society that we live in doesn't really breed any sense of purpose, any sense of direction. So, what you have nowadays, but even in the past, you had a bunch of directionless people who didn't exactly know what they wanted to do in life, and they just kind of fell into somewhere, stuck with it. So when you have a whole bunch of these directionless people that don't know where they're going, they are more susceptible to falling for these trends where they're convinced into buying these things due to fear of missing out, due to all these different factors, wanting to participate in trends, but they have no actual use for these things that they buy. And this doesn't just happen with TikTok trends, this happens with people just buying things that they don't need in general. You know, people often buy the latest gadgets, the latest technology, like new phones and everything, when their old phone works perfectly well. And it ends up costing them a bunch of money that they could have saved for more important things. But again, it's this fear of missing out. It's this fear of being left behind. This fear of not being on pace with everyone else. Keeping up with the Joneses. People go, "Oh, I see this shiny new thing. Oh, I want that now," even though I don't really have a use for it. The phone that I have right now works perfectly fine. Um, then a couple of weeks or a couple of months after they buy the thing and they use it for a while, they regret the purchase because 9 times out of 10, the new technology that they bought has some of the same features. There's no real inherent changes in the new thing that they're buying. It's just new. It's just new and shiny. That's all that it takes. Me personally, I believe that we are better than this as a people. I believe that we have the capacity to not be so easily fooled and convinced into buying these things that these big corporations keep pushing out to people, convincing them to buy these things, and they are made in the cheapest way possible with the lowest grade materials, the least amount of features, save as much money as possible. But the bigger issue with hyper consumerism and consumerism in general is what it does is it breeds a sense of greed that festers inside of a society, because you see what happens is people eventually want more and more and more and more. They want more and more and more things, and it creates this insatiable hunger, this insatiable want for everything under the sun. And it eventually makes people believe that they need these things in order to have a fulfilled life, in order to have a life that feels purposeful. Like it feels like you're actually doing something, you're actually achieving something, even though you're not really achieving anything. You're just buying into some corporation slop that convinced you to buy something that probably got made out of really cheap plastic or something in between. Um, yeah. And with this greed that gets birthed and produced by consumerism, what it eventually leads into is at the very top, it breeds massive greed. And I feel that's how we end up in a situation which we're in right now, where we have a bunch of greedy corporations, greedy one percenters who are buying up everything and making the quality of those things lower. I can't I can't tell you how many times I've seen a big corporation or something in between buy a really wholesome product and they end up completely ruining that product because they changed the ingredients, they changed the way to make it, they changed the packaging or the branding, and the product ends up becoming something to which it wasn't originally, and it completely destroys their fan base because their fan base feels alienated because the product has completely changed. Often, what happens is, for instance, you have a healthy product that gets bought out by private equity, and they turn that healthy product unhealthy because they add a whole bunch of unnecessary ingredients, cheap ingredients. So, yeah. The reason I'm pointing these smaller issues out is because this all contributes to the bigger issues that we have as a society, you know? Because, like I said, the consumerism breeds this hyper, hyper greed, if that's the correct word, phrase to say, in these corporations. And it has a trickle down effect, sort of, because corporations become greedier, so the ordinary people become greedier because they feel like that's the only way to get ahead. And and to which I say they are kind of right, because you do get to a point where greed and corruption and doing a whole bunch of nefarious things under the table is really the only way that you can make it. The society gets twisted and contorted and completely strays away from its original meaning and purpose, because what you're doing when you're participating in consumerism is you're creating a superficiality, a widespread superficiality, artificiality, where the very essence, the very soul of the society gets replaced with things that have no meaning. So your culture, your society gets replaced with an artificial culture, an artificial society that has no history behind it. Now, I feel like right now we are kind of really far along here. We really are. Because honestly, I don't really feel like there's really any turning back at this point. Because if you can't tell already, the consumerism and the greed has gotten uncontrollable. So the best we could probably do, if I'm being honest, is just rebuilding. Completely rebuilding. Because I don't really think I need to say that this is unsustainable. This is very unsustainable. You know, a society cannot function like this for very long. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. But hey, that's really all that I have for today. So, see you in the next video. Peace out.